This information was passed down and handed down generation to generation over eons around this entire planet because there was a global civilization, an advanced global civilization that existed. The Dogon tribe had directly interacted with these beings because they knew this. They knew this order of planets, the shapes, the sizes, the rotational periods, the orbital cycles. They knew the position of the axis and what degree angle of tilt, the colors of the planets. Whether you want to admit to yourself or not, these people were talking about some super advanced technology in the ancient times, far beyond what we have right now. Atlantis was not just the only amazing city on Earth. That was one amazing capital that existed, but that was one of many capitals that existed on this planet. Time frames played a huge role in the time that they became kings and rulers, and sometimes queens or goddesses, because they did have a few women that also ruled over the entire planet at one time, antediluvial, and their names are on the Sumerian kings list. The balance of feminine and masculine energy is off. There needs to be balance there, and the balance is too far to one side. Yes, you need the divine masculine, but you also need the divine feminine. And what have men done since the beginning of recorded time? They've oppressed and suppressed women's voice. They've used their bodies. They've abused them. And look what's happening right now. The apple that Eve ate wasn't an apple like of a tree, a physical apple like a piece of fruit. It was knowledge. What does apple represent? Knowledge. When you're reading these stone tablets, you're looking backwards in time, and you're getting as close as you can possibly get to the actual information. The 𝗎𝗎𝗓 and the 7 tablets of creation, which is an ancient text, a super ancient text. Now, even though the text is quoted to be approximately about 6,000 to 7,000 years old, it's much older than that because it's copied tablets from older copied tablets, because you have to continue the information on and on and on for the next civilization. So even tablet 5, which was just discovered at 𝗪𝗏 in Iraq, was re-added to the 7. But you can tell by the cuneiform, it's thousands of years old, but the story of it comes from even deeper antiquity. And how do we know this? Because we found multiple copies of the 𝗎𝗎𝗓 that have different year dating on them. In one, it mentions a planet named Nibiru. In a newer version, which is about 5,000 years old, Nibiru's name was changed to Marduk because Marduk wanted to be the destroyer. So it's pretty interesting stuff. These are the 7 tablets of creation. When you read the Old Testament of the Bible, the majority of the information in the very beginning of Genesis is coming from these 7 tablets, separating the waters from the waters, right? Bringing up the dry land. These are words, these are statements that are copied almost word for word directly from super ancient texts and put into the Bible in Genesis. And then people are running around going, oh man, this is the word of God. No, it's the word of man. It's the word of M-A-N. Okay, M-A-N, that wrote this down as a scribe from beings that were here, that were also, in my opinion, M-E-N, men and women, that weren't any gods. They were just more highly technologically advanced, maybe even more spiritually advanced. They probably had a combination of spiritual and technological advancements that they merged together, giving them godlike powers to a person that's, using copper chisels and chicken bones to build houses. It looks like magic. Looks like magic to them. The 𝗎𝗎𝗓, which is really the way to pronounce it, you could say Elish as well, more Americanized, right? Is the Babylonian creation myth. It was recovered by Austin Henry Layard in 1849 in the ruined library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, which is in Mosul, Iraq. That's the cradle of civilization, okay? That is the cradle of civilization. Iraq, where it's located right now. And there's a whole other podcast I'm gonna get into, that Africa extended all the way up into that region back then. Remember, bordering countries are just made by invisible lines created by men. But if you read ancient tablets, you discover that Africa had extended way up into what now is called Arabia. all right? And published by George Smith in 1876. 1876, the 𝗩𝗓𝗓𝗧 was first published, translated and published in 1876. What does that mean? Why am I saying that so many times? Well, a lot of people tend to think that these tablets are just fabrications of Zecharia Sitchin, a guy who wrote many, many books, amazing books about the Anunnaki. And they say, and in their claims, which you can find all over YouTube and the internet, that he was the only person that could translate this text. And he was the only one who knew the story, and he just made up the story and blah, 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 blah. That's all false. Matter of fact, Zecharia Sitchin didn't translate any tablets. He clearly states in his book, in all of his books, exactly where he got his information, what the sources were. And the 𝗩𝗓𝗓𝗧 is a main part of his sources of information to write his books, as he quotes in the actual paragraph where he's quoting words from the 𝗩𝗓𝗓𝗧, and that wasn't translated by him. Zecharia Sitchin translated absolutely nothing. What he did was he put together the pieces of the puzzle and painted a picture and created stories about these beings in this time frame to the best of his ability. Was he 100% accurate? Probably not, but nobody is. We can only get as close to the truth as possible, and then we can only lay out our hypotheses on what may have happened based on data that we've collected from different sources, which is exactly what he did. It's very important to understand that what I'm reading to you now, what I'm talking about to now, is not based on the work of Zecharia Sitchin. It's based on the work of scholars that came long before he was even thought of. He wasn't even in his dad's scrotum yet. So let's just clear the air with the whole Sitchin stuff. Published by George Smith, 1876, the 𝗩𝗓𝗓𝗧 has about 1,000 lines. It's recorded in Old Babylonian on 7 clay tablets, each holding between 115 and 170 lines of Sumero-Akkadian cuneiform script. Most of Tablet 5 had never been recovered until recently, and Tablet 5 was discovered at the Sumalai Museum in Iraq, as I talked about earlier. This epic is one of the most important sources for understanding the Babylonian worldview, centered on the supremacy of Marduk. Who is Marduk? When you go into the Egyptian text, you find out that Marduk is Amen-Ra. Yeah. When you say amen, that's who you say an amen to. This guy, one of the most evil, brutal dudes of all time. All right. Who also masqueraded as a god and made statements that made it into the Bible, like, I'm a jealous God. There'll be no other God but me, and all that. That's the guy right there. He's also in the Jewish Torah, which I'm going to show you on this tonight. He says, and the creation of humankind for the service of the gods. The creation of humankind for the service of the gods. Its primary original purpose, however, is not an exposition of theology or theology, but the elevation of Marduk. The guy had a big ego. The chief god of Babylon above all other Mesopotamian gods. There'll be no other god but me. This guy says this in the tablets. It's even in the Egyptian text. This guy was so jealous of everyone and all of what they were really his relatives, these other Atlantean kings that were ruling over Atlantean cities in different parts of the planet. He didn't want the people on the entire planet worshiping any of them, only focusing strictly on him. And what he ordered was, he ordered people to go around and start defacing the face of all the other gods, including Akhenaten, who was the pharaoh that was in the rule at one point when he was controlling the planet. And he told Akhenaten to have every one of his people go and start defacing everything. That's why the faces are chipped off. They got chipped off in ancient times. And when you go to Egypt with me, you'll learn these things. None of this stuff was chipped off because they didn't want people to know that black people weren't in Egypt. That's actually a falsehood that I actually believed in myself back in the day, until I did what? I got my passport stamp. And when you get your passport stamp and you go places, you find out the truth. And when you start digging into the ancient texts, you start finding out the truth of where the origins of a lot of these problems are. That's why you can dig up a statue that's 5,000 years old, and when you dig it up, the face is chipped off. It has nothing to do with white and black. It has everything to do with this guy right here, Marduk. When you hear the word God during this lecture that I'm giving you tonight, keep in mind, I'm not talking about the creator of the universe. I'm referencing the Anunnaki beings that masqueraded as gods with a lowercase g and were worshipped not only by the Sumerians, but by many civilizations that they themselves had kickstarted, okay? The 𝗩𝗓𝗓𝗧 exists as various copies from Babylonia and Assyria, and the version of the Library of Ashurbanipal dates back to the 7th century BCE, and the composition of text probably dates back to the Bronze Age. at the time of Hammurabi, or perhaps even earlier in the Kassite era. This is tablet 5 that was recently discovered at the 𝗪𝗏 Museum in Iraq, and it now has been added to the collection. You can see these tablets at the British Museum in London, which I went to and visited when I was there last year in 2022. And what's interesting is we know that our ancient ancestors had come in contact with these beings because, for one, the Dogon tribe had directly interacted with these beings because they knew this. They knew this order of planets, the shapes, the sizes, the rotational periods, the orbital cycles. They knew the position of the axis and what degree angle of tilt, the colors of the planets. The Dogon, these people right here, they knew all of that. How did they get this knowledge? How in the world did they get this information? According to them, it was the Anunnaki beings that they call the Nommo. These Nommo beings, they came from Sirius B. These are Anunnaki Atlantean people that came from Sirius B, and they engaged these Dogon beings, people, and they taught them everything about multiple star systems, trinary orbital patterns of a trinary star system, light years away, and all the knowledge of all the planets in our solar system. And I mean complete knowledge too. Orbital cycles, angles on axis, degree of tilt, the colors, the shapes, the sizes. They knew all of that long before what we call modern science knew anything. If you go to the Jewish American Library, all right, jewishvirtuallibrary.org is how you can pull it up, jewishvirtuallibrary.org. Because people say, well, how come I don't see these people's names in any of this, the Torah and all these other, well, first of all, the Torah and the Bible, that's New Age information. Because I found texts that's 10 times older than them, eons older than this text, all right? And so you look at this New Age information, it's only a couple thousand years old or so. But you look in there, guess what you find? Look, I just pull up one. I just said Marduk, find Marduk. His name is all over the place. That's Amun-Ra in the Torah. He's all over the place. He's everywhere. Look how many times his name shows up on one page. This is the book that is read by the Jews, right? The Torah, the Ethiopian Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews. This guy is in their book, calling out orders, claiming to be God, telling people what to do, trying to rule over human beings. Clear as day. How come they're not talking about this in Bible study or temple? How come this should be the main topic of discussion, but it never is? You have George Smith, okay, 1840 to 1876, was an English Assyriologist, apprentice engraver, but self-taught in cuneiform in the corridors of the British Museum. Eventually, he was hired by Sir Henry Rawlinson, a prominent archaeologist, and Smith achieved worldwide attention when he discovered an account of the flood with obvious biblical parallels in 1872. Zechariah Sitchin wasn't born yet, guys. Related in the Chaldean account of the deluge, this book expands on the previous work and presents numerous translations of tablets, including the first print and appearance of the Epic of Gilgamesh. You also have E.A. Spicer, another person here, long before Zechariah Sitchin. In 1926, E.A. Spicer won a Guggenheim Fellowship to study the remains of the ancient Mitanni and Hurrians in northern Mesopotamia. While there in 1927, he discovered the Tepe Guara, one of the world's earliest cradles of civilization, and in 1928, he was appointed assistant professor of Semitics at the University of Pennsylvania and a full professor in 1931. He was the field director and joint excavation of the American Schools of Oriental Research and the University Museum in 1930 to 1932 and 1936 to 1937. Undertaking excavations at Tepe Guara, Tel Bila, he also translated the Hurrian legal text found at Nutsi. After the war, he returned to the University of Pennsylvania, where he was chairman of the Department of Oriental Studies from 1947 until his death in 1965. He was also appointed Ellis Professor of Hebrew and Semitic Languages and Literatures there in 1954. He translated and wrote extensive commentary for the volume on Genesis in the Anchor Bible series and was one of the editors of the Torah in the New Jewish Publication Society of America version of the Old Testament. A noted student of his, Moshe Greenberg, became the Israel Prize Laureate in Bible Studies. These are the people that translated these tablets and these texts. These ain't no idiots, okay? So for anybody, let me move this down. Let me pull this down for a second. Let me minimize it, because I got to say something. For anybody who's claiming that these texts are hogwash and these people don't know what they're talking about, and you think you got a higher IQ than these people, the two guys I just read to you, IQs are off the charts. These two guys are the most revolutionary scholars of all time in terms of ancient history and ancient tablets and texts. Period. So if you think you got a higher IQ than these guys, then you need to, let's have a debate, because you probably, first of all, let's do an IQ test. Number one, let's take the IQ test and see where you're at. Let's see how many languages you can actually speak. I can dabble in 5 languages right now. Pretty good too. How many languages can you speak? How many ancient texts and tablets have you translated for the world to be able to have knowledge and wisdom and understanding? 0. So these people have real credentials, and real credentials to me, they override anybody out there talking anything crazy, and especially people who have no passport stamps, period. When you have no passport stamps, you can't even step to me and say anything. You can't even say hello. Next. Let's take a look at this one here before I go on to more tablet. Leonard William King. And he was an English archaeologist and Assyriologist, educated at Rugby School and King's College in Cambridge. He collected stone inscriptions widely in the Near East, taught Assyrian and Babylonian archaeology at King's College for a number of years, published a large number of works on these subjects. He's also known for his translations of ancient works such as the Code of Hammurabi. He became an assistant to the keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities at the British Museum. Here's some of his works. First Steps in Assyrian, a book for beginners, being a series of historical, mythological, religious, magical, epistolary, and other texts printed in cuneiform characters with interlinear transliteration and translation of a sketch of Assyrian grammar, sign list, and vocabulary. Letters and inscriptions of Hammurabi, Encyclopedia Biblica, Egypt and Western Asia in the light of recent discoveries, chronicles concerning early Babylonian kings, legends of Babylonia and Egypt in relation to Hebrew tradition. The 7 Tablets of Creation is his translation, or the Babylonian Assyrian legends concerning the creation of the world and mankind, the Code of Hammurabi. These are the kind of people that are translating these texts. It's not it's not what you think. It's not people who are just sitting around in a robe and slippers with a prepaid track phone trying to figure out what these things said. That's not what's happening. It's real work being done here. It had been done a very, very long time ago. Let's take a look at how cuneiform is actually written by Mr. Finkel at the British Museum.
Which is a Semitic tongue related to the modern languages of Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic. The writing system which Cyrus's officials used was the traditional cuneiform script, which had been invented in ancient Iraq well before 3000 BC. It is written by pressing a stylus, something a bit like a chopstick, into the surface of the clay, which is nearly dry, and the signs which convey the sound of the language consist of different arrangements of these strokes. They're written one by one, and the reader has to join them up, and the sound emerges from the clay. This is the line that says, I am Kurash, Shar Kishshati, king of the world, the great king, king of Babylon, and so it goes on. So we're going to write Kurash. So the first sign, Ku, has a big vertical, 2 small horizontals, 1 bigger horizontal, a little vertical, and another horizontal, like a box. This is Ku. Then Ra, we have 3 strong horizontals to begin, 1 big one next to it, and then 1 little vertical wedge, and 1 bigger vertical wedge. Ku, Ra. Now we do Ash, which is 3 long horizontals, Komsa, and then a vertical in the middle. So we can read this, Ku, Ra, Ash, the name of Cyrus.
All right, so move this out of here. So you see the difficulty in writing this text. That's just a small sample of just writing a few words. Can you imagine how much effort it takes to write thousands and thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of lines of that text? It was a very, very, very important job. You were truly honored to be able to write that information, to be able to even have the knowledge on how to do it, how to use that stylus and the wet clay. And then you were truly honored to be able to take it, from somebody that was dictating it to you. It was a high level honor. It was considered like the highest level you can think of. If you were to think of a high level honor today, like getting a special star or a special award, whatever the highest level you can think, that's what it was for these people. Also, they took it so seriously that they made sure they got everything to as accurate as they possibly could. When you're reading these stone tablets, you're looking backwards in time and you're getting as close as you can possibly get to the actual information. You're getting the closest you can get to the truth. You can never get to the absolute truth. That's impossible. And if anybody tells you you can, they're lying to you. If anybody says this is the absolute truth, they're lying. But you can get very close because you know the care, the dedication, the understanding, the mindset of these people in their glory of having the capability and the honor of writing this stuff. They were doing the absolute best. They gave you 100% of whatever they can give you. And so when you read these ancient texts, which are baked clay, which turns into stone, you're as close as you can possibly get to information that was issued and given out in ancient times. And another thing about these tablets, you can't change what they say. You cannot change a stone tablet. You can't alter these stone tablets. You can't make it say spaceship. You can't make it say, genetic modification. You can't make it say these things. You can't. There's no way rock Photoshop in the third dimension that you can have a clay mold into something else, a tablet mold into something else. What you're looking at is what was written. Whether you want to admit to yourself or not, these people were talking about some super advanced technology in the ancient times, far, far beyond what we have right now, far, far beyond. So 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪😅, it's going to be a great talk because we're going to be talking about a wise man who was saved from the flood after being warned. Who was 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪? He was told to build a ship. Does that sound familiar to you? He was told to build a ship. Sounds like the biblical story of Noah, all right? He was told to build a ship. Thank you, Ronnie, R.A. Collins, appreciate you. Now, what's interesting about that is, this story is, not only does it show up in the Epic of 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪滙, we're talking about the 𝗩𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡𝗡. It shows up in other ancient texts and tablets from around the world, scriptures, papyruses, cylinder scrolls, similar stories. How can all of these people on this one planet in different regions thousands of years ago know the same exact story? How? How is it possible? It's possible because just like every single one of you, pretty much most of you probably know, row your boat gently down the stream, or London bridges falling down, or any of these other nursery rhymes, for example, right? This information was passed down and handed down generation to generation over eons around this entire planet because there was a global civilization, an advanced global civilization that existed. And when I get into the 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙 Now, I'm not going to go into the Epic of Gilgamesh tonight. I'll do that another night. But tonight I'm going to go into the Epic of 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 It's a pretty incredible story, all right? We know that the Epic of 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 were translated in the 1800s. 1800s. So we're talking about something really old, really ancient, We're not talking about something that was just etched into some stone last week or last month or 100 AD. 100 AD is when the Bible was, the beginning stages of putting the Bible together happened. 100 AD to 900 AD, that's the biblical text. That's fairly recent, all right? I know in one of my most recent posts, I talked about the fact that Jesus is not real. The person was real, but the name is not real. The name is not accurate. It's a real name, but it's not an accurate name for the person. His name was Yeshua, right? Yeshua in ancient texts and tablets, and even in the Torah, Yeshua, but they were calling him Jesus in now what more, quote unquote, modern times. The J was just added to the alphabet in 1524 AD. The J was added to the alphabet in 1524 AD. So who are you calling on when you call on the name of Jesus? You think you're talking about a person that walked the ground and existed with that exact name, but you're not. You need to be calling on Yeshua, because that's the person's name. You're calling on a name that doesn't even, it's a fake name. The name Jesus, it was Isus before the J was added. And who is Isus? Well, you know who that is, right? That's Enlil from the Emerald Tablets. I mean, from the Sumerian tablets, that's Enlil. So we're talking about ancient texts and tablets that go back and predate all this biblical text. And we find a super ancient account of Atrahasis that exists long before, thousands and thousands and thousands of years before the biblical text was even assembled and put together. And how did they get the biblical text? They copied it from ancient scriptures, the papyrus, cylinder scrolls, and so forth that was found all over the region. And the reason why I'm doing this, because I know the majority of people are never going to read this text. So I'm going to read it for you, and you're going to listen. Now, there are some dead spots or some question mark spots where some of the stone was damaged and some of the wording could not be deciphered, right? So let's get into this. When the gods instead of man, so we're talking about these gods, but notice the gods even in here have a lowercase g, not a capital G for the creator of the universe, a lowercase g, meaning man has deified these people, even though these people were not the creators of the universe, but they had advanced knowledge and advanced technology. They did the work and bore the loads. So the gods used to do the work and bore the load. Now think about this for a second. What are they talking about, do the work? They're talking about, this epic is kind of really beginning when these people came down from heaven to earth and began to turn mud into a kingdom. In the ancient Kemetic text, right? Then the Turu turned mud into a kingdom. These are the same exact people from the land of Kemet. Now they say when the gods instead of man did the work and bore the loads. The gods' load was too great. Now think about this for a second. Think about this for a second, all right? I'll have to come back and answer this question a little bit later, Zetrock. Thank you for the donation. I'll answer it later. Think about this for a second. Why in the world would the creator of the universe need to work and do labor and do hard labor? Why? Why would the God of the universe have to bear the load and do labor? The work was too hard. The trouble was too much. Well, think about that. Well, what trouble, what work? If you're God, if you're the creator of the universe, why is the work too hard? Why is the load too hard to bear? The great Anunnaki. Now, let me stop right there. So many people have commented on my post. The word Anunnaki is made up. Zecharia Sitchin made up the name Anunnaki. No, Zecharia Sitchin got that from ancient text that was already translated from the 1800s, long before he was a sperm in his daddy's, you know what? Okay? The wake-up call is here. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Now, the Igigi, you've heard me talk about the Igigi, right? The Igigi were these working class Anunnaki beings. And they were really like volunteers when you analyze the text. They were not slaves. However, they were being treated like slaves. They were being treated like lower class citizens. And so they were starting to get pissed off because they were given 7 times the workload as the other gods. And these people are, like I said, gods with a lowercase g. They're just men. They're flesh and blood people that put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me. So they made them carry the workload 7-fold. Anu, their father, was king. So Anu was like the head figure, right? A-N-U. Their chamberlain was 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗧. Their canal controller, 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓. They took the box of lots and cast the lots. The gods made the division. Anu went up to the sky, and Enlil took the earth for his people. The boat which bars the sea was assigned to far-sighted Enki. When Anu had gone up to the sky, and the gods of the Apsu had gone below, the Anunnaki of the sky made the 𝗎𝗎𝗓 bear the workload. So these people went up into their sky ship. They're just kicking back. They got their feet up. They're relaxed. They're chilling. They said, you guys do all the work. We're going to sit back and watch from the sky. Just keep laboring, keep creating this breakaway civilization that we started here. Keep laboring and keep digging these canals and building the buildings and laying down the plumbing and everything else. We're going to watch from the sky. Now, this is written before these Anunnaki had engaged mankind, our cousins that were already here on the planet. They weren't Homo sapiens sapien like us, but they were a version of us. They weren't engaged by these people yet, though. These people were still doing the work themselves to create their own breakaway civilization, kind of really ignoring us and leaving us alone, believe it or not. So he says, when Anu had gone up to the sky and the gods of the Apsu had gone below, the Anunnaki of the sky made the 𝗎𝗎𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 bear the workload. The gods had to dig out canals. Now, why in the world are gods digging out canals? So we're clearly talking about flesh and blood people. We're talking about people that had advanced technology and advanced knowledge. We're not talking about creators of the universe. So he says, the gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. I'm talking about farming now. The 𝗎𝗎𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River. Wow. And then dug out the Euphrates. Then there's some missing pieces of the tablet. It says, in the deep, they set up the Apsu of the land. Inside it, raised its top. All of the mountains, they were counting the years of loads. They had been laboring for quite some time, by the way. The Great Marsh, they were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years, they bore the excess. 3,600 years is one rotation of their home planet around our sun. They call it a shar, according to these Anunnaki people. Hard work night and day. They groaned and blamed each other. This is how you know they're not real gods. They groaned. They're in pain. People are hurting. This back-breaking labor going on. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our masters, the chamberlain, and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry, then it says the Lord, I think it was trying to say Lord Enki, something to the counselor of the gods, because it's a broken piece of the tablet. The counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling, come, let us carry Enlil. Enlil is Yahweh in the modern day Bible. Let me tell you that again. In the modern day Bible, Enlil is Yahweh. He is the God that came back to Eden and noticed that the people had gained some damn sense and realized that they weren't freaking animals and put on clothes and got some knowledge in their freaking head from Enki, and he got pissed off about it. Enlil is the one, if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh and a lot of these other ancient tablets, that's killing off humans by the thousands and tens of thousands because they're just making too much noise. We're talking about a very evil person, an evil person that ruled over this planet for quite some time. the counselor of the gods, the warrior from his dwelling. So they said, let's get to Enlil and talk to him. We got to get to the counselor of the gods. This guy's the head man in charge. We need to holler at him and tell him, hey man, our backs are breaking here doing this labor. Then Allah made his voice heard. Oh, Allah. You thought that came from the Quran? No, it comes from the Sumerian tablets. And spoke of the gods, his brothers. Then there's a gap about 8 lines right here. He says, come, let us carry the counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling. Now cry battle. Let us mix fight with battle. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for fire god. They flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior, Enlil's dwelling, it was night in the middle watch. So what's happening here? There's a coup going on. There's a coup going on. These 𝗍𝗍 people, according to these tablets, were working on Earth and also working on Mars at the same exact time. They're working in 2 locations, Earth and Mars, according to these tablets, not according to Billy Carson. And the work was 7 times the load to bear. So what happens? It says that they come down, the gods descended from Lammu, they come down from Mars to Earth to encircle the encampment of Enlil where he slept. Because now they're like, hey, we've been begging for relief, we've been asking for a break, that we've been working for thousands of years, and their complaint was that, hey man, we need a break, and if we don't get a break, we're gonna go to war. These are the sons of God that fell from heaven to earth and went against the Lord, right? This is what made it into the Bible, but this is the actual real story right here, the real story. So he said, the house was surrounded by the god, but the god had not realized. It was night, the middle watch. 𝗍𝗑 was surrounded. 𝗍𝗑 is their fort. Enlil had not realized, yet 𝗪𝗪 was attentive and had it closed. He held the lock and watched the gate. 𝗪𝗪 roused 𝗪𝗓𝗧. They listened to the noise of the 𝗍𝗍. The 𝗪𝗓𝗧 roused his master. Woke him up. Get up, man. They out here. They're about to attack us, man. Made him get out of bed. My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Enlil, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Enlil had weapons brought to his dwelling. Oh, they got weapons. And trust me, these ain't sticks. These are not sticks, okay? With carved rocks on the tip, with sharp rocks on the edge. These are real weapons. He says, take your weapons and stand in front of me. 𝗪𝗓𝗧 barred his door, took up his weapons and stood in front of Enlil. 𝗪𝗓𝗧 made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Enlil. Oh, my lord, your face is, then it's got a damage here to the stone. Your face is tamarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? So he's saying, hey man, these are your people too. Like, what's going on here? Right? Listen to them. Oh, Enlil, your face is shallow. Tamarisk, why do you fear your own sons? Send for Anu to be brought down to you. Have Enki fetched into your presence. He sent for Anu. Anu is their father, right? He's the lead dude, right? He's the main guy. He sent for Anu to be brought down to him. Enki was fetched into his presence. So they went and got Enki, they went and got Anu. So now you got Anu, who's the father. You got Enki, who's the son, and you got Enlil, who's another son. So these are 2 brothers, Enki and Enlil. As a matter of fact, Earth is named after Ea Enki. Ea, right? And then Ki is Earth. So that's where we get the name Earth from. It comes from an ancient Sumerian, quote unquote, lowercase g god, who just happens to be the father of Atrahasis, the guy that wrote the epic. All right, so this guy that I'm reading from, he's actually half human and half Anunnaki. Pretty interesting. That's where you get the name demigod from, right? The term demigod. So check this out. He says he sent for Anu to be brought down to him. Enki was fetched into his presence. Anu, king of the sky, was present. They went and they contacted Anu, who was in the sky ship, and he came down to the planet. They went and got him. They summoned him and he came on down. He never liked to stay down here too much, spend too much time on the surface of the planet. He rather hang out in his sky ship. That's what the text always says. Anu, king of the sky, was present. Enki, king of Apsu, attended. The great Anunnaki were present. Oh, there goes that word again, Anunnaki. I guess it is a real word in real ancient text, not fabricated and made up by Zecharia Sitchin, because Zecharia Sitchin didn't make up that name like a lot of these bad YouTube videos try to say. Enlil got up and the chase was put. Enlil made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. Is it against me that they have risen? Shall I do battle? What did I see in my own eyes? A rabble was running around my door. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Enlil. Let 𝗪𝗧 go out and find out word of the 𝗪𝗦𝗦𝗧. In other words, let's go out there, send 𝗪𝗧 out there to talk to these crazy people and tell us what they want. What do you want? Who have surrounded your door? A command to Enlil was made. His voice was heard. Go to the next part of the tablet. And spoke to Vizier 𝗪𝗧. 𝗪𝗧, open your door, take up your weapons, and stand before me. In the assembly of all the gods, bow, then stand and tell them, your father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain 𝗪𝗓𝗓, and your canal controller 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗓 have sent me to say, who is in charge of this rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Who declared war? Who ran the door of Enlil? Who ran to the door of Enlil? In other words, who's in charge here? Who's the one commanding this coup against the rulers of planet Earth? Who is it? Who allowed you guys, who approved this mission for you guys to come down from Mars to Earth, to gather up any 𝗪𝗦𝗦𝗧 on Earth, and to come over here today? Where are they? They're in South Africa. They're at Adam's Calendar in South Africa, which exists right now today. You can go there and you'll find the oldest gold mines on Earth, 200,000 years old, okay? You'll find them right there, all right? So I'll answer these questions at the end. So, he says, who ran to the door of Enlil? 𝗪𝗧 opened his door, took up his weapons, and went before Enlil in the assembly of all the gods. He bowed and stood before and told the message. Father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗓, and your canal controller 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗓 have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? So it repeats itself here. Who declared war? I guess they're not answering, so they're asking this question again. Enlil says, every single one of us, gods, declare war. We have put a stop to the digging. Now this is where the 𝗪𝗦𝗧𝗓 is speaking here. They said, we have put a stop to the digging. In other words, we're done doing the slave work. We're not working anymore. Do you notice the trend here about when you enslave somebody, even if you don't call them a slave, when you abuse somebody's natural living rights, at some point, it might take thousands of years, but at some point, the people will rebel. I don't care what planet you're from, the people will rebel. He said, we have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard. The trouble is too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Enlil. See, they call themselves gods. Did you hear that? Every single one of us gods, they didn't call themselves slaves. They recognize that they're gods, that they're powerful. Every one of us gods has agreed to complain to Enlil, who's the most evil one of them all. 𝗪𝗧 took his weapons, went and returned to Enlil. My lord, you sent me, and I went and I explained. Every single one of us gods declare war, they said. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard. The trouble is too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Enlil. So he repeated the speech to Enlil. Enlil listened to that speech. His tears flowed. Oh, this guy's got a little compassion now all of a sudden. Enlil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree with you to the sky. Oh, with you to the sky. He's telling his dad to get back up to the ship and sent a decree up there. Show your strength while the Anunnaki are sitting before you. Call up one God and let them cast him for destruction. You see, he thought he was crying because he was sad that the people were working too hard. Nah, he was crying because, you know what? I love these people, but man, you know what? I'm gonna have to destroy him anyway. This guy's a psychopathic narcissist. This guy's a psychopathic narcissist. And that shows up in the biblical text as well, right? When he destroys the Tower of Babel and all, that's a whole nother podcast. But it was Enlil that destroyed the Tower of Babel in the biblical text in the Old Testament. How do I know that? It's in ancient tablets that they just copied the story. The guy's just the absolute ultimate narcissist, psychopathic narcissist, by the way. I hope you guys share this video. We got 2,100 in here now. Check this out. He says, check this out. He says, Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. He's like, Enlil, come on, man. Are you serious? Like, you want me to blow up this city from the space, from my ship, from the sky? Like, for real, dude? Like, these people are suffering, man. Like, you put too much work on them. I mean, it ain't a mystery. Like, you're busting their backs. He said the work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. He's saying, they've been telling us this. They've been complaining to us. They've been pissed off and angry. They've been letting us know they're overworked. The load is too hard to bear. And we keep ignoring them. And now, here they are. They're ready to go to battle against us because we didn't listen. Does he sound like the gods that created the universe? They sound like people to me. I'm just saying. I'm just asking for a friend because these are the ones that are in the biblical text. Then there's a couple of missing phrases inside of this tablet that's broken. While the Anunnaki were sitting before you, and while 𝗩𝗓𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧. 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧, open your door, take your weapons, bow in the assembly of the great gods, and then stand. And tell them your father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain 𝗪𝗓𝗕, and your canal controller 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗍 have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who will be in charge of the battle? Which guard started the war? A rabble was running around my door. When 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧 heard this, he took up his weapons, bowed in the assembly of the great gods, then stood and told them, your father Anu, your counselor warrior Enlil, your chamberlain 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗍, and your canal controller 𝗍𝗓𝗓𝗍 have sent me to say, who is in charge of this rabble? And it kind of repeats it there, a little bit, but that's how it is, right? It's pretty interesting. Ea, that's Enki, made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Enki says. Why are we blaming them? Enki is the same person who's considered to be the serpent that showed up in the Garden of Eden and talked to Adam and Eve. Same exact person. And when his brother shows up, Enlil, who AKA Yahweh, he's pissed off because these people have gained some damn sense. The apple that Eve ate wasn't an apple like off of a tree, a physical apple like a piece of fruit. It was knowledge. What does apple represent? Knowledge. They gained knowledge by talking to Enki, that they were self-aware, that they were sentient beings, that they were on the same level as the Anunnaki, and that they weren't animals, and that this was a laboratory and they were being experimented on for mating purposes to duplicate and create a slave race. Enki had his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are you blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There it is. 𝗩𝗓𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a primeval man. Got to read the way this is broken down from the Sumerian. Let her create primeval man. So this is where, now we've reached a point where Enki is like, okay, either we're going to go to battle against this mob of angry Ijiji and lose because they outnumber us, or we got to come up with a solution, and we better come up with one pretty damn quick. We better come up with a solution pretty damn quick, or it's going to be all over for us. This will be our last stand right here, right? So Enki says, you know, I have an idea. Let the womb goddess create a primeval man. This is the first instance of engaging and genetically modifying the existing hominid on this planet that they used to, at that point, were leaving alone. They came here about 450,000 years ago, and they worked for 250,000 of those 450,000 years themselves, when you add up all the shards in the ancient text, right? And then 200,000 years ago, they decided to do this primeval man and make them bear the load. And guess what? When does modern science say Homo sapiens showed up on this planet? 200,000 years ago. Just go to any college book and you'll read it and you'll find out that's what the answer is. You think that's a coincidence? So he says, let the womb goddess, let her create primeval man, so that they may bear the yoke, the work of Enlil. Oh, we're talking about turning people into slaves now. Now we're getting into real slavery. Now we understand the real full objective here is, okay, we were kind of treating y'all like slaves. We didn't listen. My bad. Now we're going to go ahead and take these people on this planet, turn them into our slaves now. Let them do the work of Enlil. Because Enlil was building big cities. He had this big master plan on the previous tablet where he's showing his sister, 𝗪𝗘𝗕𝗦𝗧, that he had a plan he was going to put on this earth for all time. He said, this plan is for all time. From this point forward, everything on this earth will be built based on my blueprint. And guess what? It still is till this very day. To this very day, his blueprint of building cities and structures and communities and all that is still on this planet today, after all these tens of thousands of years, right? He says, so that they may bear the yoke, the work of Enlil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Let man bear the load of the gods. 𝗩𝗘𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring. Oh, in the Bible it says, let us make man in our image. Don't let these pastors fool you with the foolishness. They give you the trickery. Oh, that's the Holy Ghost and the this and the... No, man. It came from this 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙 there's no, this is the people who said, let us make man in our image. It's right here in the tab. It's actually coming up next. And let man bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise mommy, you are the womb goddess. In Egypt, she's Hathor. It's Hathor. The goddess Hathor is the womb goddess. The creator of mankind. Create primeval man, that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Enlil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Let man bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It's not proper for me to make him. She's like, wait a minute, man, hold on. This ain't right, man. This really, you know what? Y'all ain't right. She's like, hold on, I gotta make my voice heard. I don't agree with this. I do not agree with this. And guess what? The work of Enki's, he makes everything pure. If he gives me clay, I will do it. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god shall be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix clay with his flesh and his blood. They're not talking about taking one actual Anunnaki god and killing him. Some people have translated it that way. What they're talking about is taking genetic material from this guy, from this being, whichever one it was. They're talking about taking genetic material, which is going to be mixed together in something they call clay, but I'm pretty sure it's not the clay we know about. It's something else that allows life to persist. Most likely, some type of a base or a zygote of some type or whatever it is, but it's definitely not dirt clay from the ground. Check this out. He says, on the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Then two shall mix clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man. Then a god, here we go, here it goes. A god and a man will be mixed together. They're talking about genetically mixing human DNA and these gods, which are Anunnaki DNA. We know they're Anunnaki because that's what they call themselves in this text, which predates everything that exists. So there you go. In the Bible, they're called the Anak, A-N-A-K. And it says in that verse where they mention the Anak, it says, we were like grasshoppers in their eyesight because these people were massive people. He says, then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drum beat forever after. Let the ghost come into existence from the god's flesh. Let her proclaim it is a living sign, and let the ghost exist so as to not forget the slain god. Oh, let the ghost exist so as not to forget the slain god. Interesting. That's the same way as saying, let us make man in our image. In other words, every time we look on this being, we're going to see ourselves in it. They answered yes in the assembly. The great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. They call themselves assigners of fates. They call themselves ordainers of destiny in the text too. On the 1st, 17th, and 15th of the month, he made a purification by washing. The Walla who had intelligence, they slaughtered in their assembly. Nintu mixed the clay with his flesh and his blood. They heard the drum beat forever after. A ghost came into existence from the god's flesh, and she, Nintu, proclaimed it as a living sign. In other words, they got a living being now. They got a modification. We got the first valid modification going on. The ghost existed so as not to forget the slain god. After she had mixed that clay, she called up the Anunnaki and the great gods, the Ijiji, the great gods. Oh, they called the Ijiji great gods too. So it's clear that they weren't slaves. Spat spittle upon the clay. Mommy made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. I have carried out perfectly the work you ordered of me. In other words, she said, I completed my mission, right? You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. Oh, wow. I have relieved you of your hard work. He's talking to the Ijiji now. Your hard work your days of hard work and slavery is over. Return to do whatever you please now. I have imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. So now you have bestowed all this stress, this hard work, this back-breaking labor, and everything else is now going to fall on man. We're going to be the ones making noise. We're going to be the ones complaining. We're going to be the ones, but guess what? We don't have the power to overthrow them because they got more technology than us. There won't be a battle coming to the door of Enlil from humans. I have undone the fetter and granted freedom. So the Ijiji now, she's saying, look, you guys are free to do whatever you want. They listened to this speech of hers and they were freed from anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you mommy, but now your name shall be mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise mommy went to the room of fate. The womb goddess were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation for Enki, staying in her presence, made her recite it. When she finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces, and 7 pieces to the right and 7 on the left. Between them, she put a mud brick. She used, and some broken pieces in the tablet, she used a reed to cut the umbilical cord. Called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddess, 7 and 7. 7 created males and 7 created females. So they done took this thing and split it up. So what they're talking about here when she's saying here, 7 pieces on the right and 7 pieces on the left, we're talking about cell division. What they did was they found a way here to divide these and split these embryos into 7 embryos. on one side and 7 on the other. So they had 7 males and 7 females that they had created through this method. If you really read into this, the way it's read, the way it's reading, it sounds like cloning, a cloning technique to make these clones. And so she used the same exact clay, the same exact genetic material that was in it, whatever this clay is. And then from there, she was able to get 7 pieces on the left and 7 pieces on the right and took them to full term. And then she cut their umbilical cords, and she had 7 created males and 7 created females. This is before Adam and Eve existed, by the way. There's no Adam and Eve at this point. There's still no Adam and Eve. They came much later down the line, much later. We're talking about the first set of man that was made to bear the load of these Igigi. They were made and created by this cloning process. The problem that they had with this cloning process, the further you read into it, these people couldn't reproduce on their own. They couldn't actually have sex together and make their own babies. That was the problem. So they had to keep going through this process of like continuing to make these people by this cloning method. And it was a lot of work. So he says, look, she met you. So she says she called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddess, 7 and 7, 7 created males, 7 created females. So these are the clones, the beginning of the clone age. What do you get? What do you think George Lucas gets the clones and all that out of Star Wars? He got all this stuff from ancient texts. For the womb goddess is creator of fate. Then you got a broken piece of tablet here. Them by 2, it says something about them by 2. Them by 2 in her presence. I think you're talking about making 2 and 2, 2 and 2 over and over again. That's what it kind of seems like it's trying to say here with the tablet's a little bit broken. Mommy made these rules for people. In the house of woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. 𝗩𝗘𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗘, wise mommy, shall be honored. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. So now they got this cloning thing and this zygote thing down packed. They're making it happen. They're celebrating themselves. Oh, we're so good. Look what we've done. We now have created a new slave race to do the work for us. I want to be honored on special days. I want holidays named after me. These people are crazy. These are crazy. You're talking about ultimate narcissistic psychopaths, sociopaths. This is it. It don't get no crazier than this. This is wild. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself. A man to a girl, to her bosom. There's some broken tablets here. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek. In gardens and waysides, a wife of her husband choose each other. So they're talking about now, as they're now growing up to a certain point, they leave their parent. We're taking them away from their parents. As soon as we can tell they're in puberty, we see a little bit of hair on the neck. We see that the woman's starting to develop a little bit of a body. The girl's starting to develop a body. We're going to sever her. We can see her bosom now, it says. We can see her bosom. We can see a beard being seen. We're taking them away from the parents. We're ripping them away from the parents now. We're taking them and we're putting them into this other area where we're going to make them mate. This is where they started mating them like animals. And Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month as a term of fates. So what they're saying is, instead of a 9-month pregnancy, these pregnancies were lasting 10 months at that time. They were 10-month pregnancies, not 9. And to add credence to that, even further on, when Adam was the firstborn, I guess you say, perfected version of Homo sapiens sapien, one of the actual Anunnaki women themselves gave birth to him because they were trying to perfect the process so that they can mate on their own. And it was a 10-month term as well. And she held him up and said, my hands have mated, the Adamu, which means first man. I'm giving y'all the real history of Earth now, the real history of where we come from. This is the closest you're gonna get to real history. All that garbage you've been listening to on TV and National Geographics and all these other people, and going to school and getting these old ass school books that have no real knowledge in them. This is the closest you're gonna get to finding out how we got here. I'm giving you the knowledge right now. We'll be talking about the secrets of the Sumerian chart, and it's going to be a great talk. You're going to get some real knowledge. You know, we're talking about the Sumerian civilization, which is supposed to be only 6,000 to 7,000 years old. However, it's been proven that these tablets that have been discovered, not all of them, but a lot of them, a lot of the ones that seem to have these grand stories, were copies of copies of copies of copies. And how do we know this? Because copies of copies of copies have already been found in some cases. And even with some of the information slightly being changed, like for example, in the 𝗩𝗡𝗕𝗏, Marduk, during his kingship, decided to change the name Nibiru to his name because he wanted to be the destroyer. See, so this kind of stuff comes out when real archaeologists and researchers start digging into it. And then all of a sudden, these extra tablets pop up, and now they actually appear in different museums around the world, like the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, and the British Museum, and of course in England as well. You can go there. I've been to both. So we're talking about the Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest in the world, and it's left a profound legacy that continues to fascinate us. I mean, people are talking about this all the time. People being researchers, investigators, archaeologists, they can't seem to get away from the Sumerian text because it encompasses everything, and so many languages sprung out of it. The cuneiform writing system and the creation of various texts, including the Sumerian King's List, like I said, it stands out. It makes you scratch your head and challenge, well, how old is Homo sapien? How old really is Homo sapien? Because if these texts are giving out years and time frames that go and span for tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, then the archaeologists that have to go along with the mainstream are going, we better bend this into our little system here. We better bend this into our own agenda-based knowledge, because if we don't, then all of a sudden people are too old. And if they're too old, then evolution doesn't make any sense. And we don't want to tip the apple cart. We don't want people thinking that human beings and beings have been on this planet far longer than we have been told. Far longer. I mean, incredibly longer. They don't want that information to come out. They just don't want it to come out. The Sumerian King's List is an extraordinary historical document that actually outlines the reigns of Sumerian kings from a pre-dynastic ruling era. And these were historical figures who governed up until the downfall of the Sumerian civilization. Now, the Sumerian civilization didn't really particularly have a specific type of a downfall. They had a geological disaster that created a collapse of society. But later on, you discover that they restart the civilization in Kemet, in ancient Kemet, long before it was called Egypt. Now, Kemet already had an advanced civilization there prior to the Great Flood, but it seems as if they moved there and made the new home base the land of Kemet, and everything sprung from Kemet thereforth after the Great Flood, post-diluvial. But antediluvial, it seems as if headquarters of advanced knowledge and wisdom, it seems as if it's coming out of this area called Sumeria in Mesopotamia, right? The land between two rivers. Although there were civilizations existing around the entire planet, we have records from these people that date back antediluvial, before the flood, pre-flood text, okay? The list not only chronicles the names of the kings and lengths of their reigns, but also provides insights into the Sumerians. I mean, deep insight. And a lot of people won't spend the time to dig into this. They just want to listen to other people and their perspective and not do their own research. So they had views on kingship, and it was based on the divine right to rule, and also was based on the nature of time. Time frames played a huge role in the time that they became kings and rulers, and sometimes queens or goddesses, because they did have a few women that also ruled over the entire planet at one time, antediluvial, and their names are on the Sumerian kings list. So shout out to the women. We need more women rulers because look what men have done to this planet. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we destroyed this planet. Men with their egos and their desire for power, and now we have the internet and the YouTube clout chasers that use other people's names to build their accounts and attack people. Men, we're horrible. It's horrible. Men have done a disjustice to the human race and to the planet as a whole. We are running this planet like it's a gigantic bachelor pad. The balance of feminine and masculine energy is off. There needs to be balance there. And the balance is too far to one side. Yes, you need the divine masculine, but you also need the divine feminine. And what have men done since the beginning of recorded time? They've oppressed and suppressed women's voice. They've used their bodies. They've abused them. All right? And look what's happening right now. When Hatshepsut, which was an actual woman who ruled over the land of Kemet, Egypt, when she ruled for her 20 years, she actually did a phenomenal job, better than most pharaohs that ever existed. She raised the country up. She gave them the capability to develop and spread out into different industries. The country blossomed under her rule. And if there was a battle that needed to be fought, she took care of that swiftly as well. But you see, she had to pretend as if she was a man to rule. And as soon as her kingship was over, somebody came in and began to try to chisel away the history of her, the knowledge of her. Because another man came in and was totally disgusted and pissed off that a woman did such a phenomenal job, a better job than most men. So the balance is off. It's just facts. It's absolute facts. There's no way to get around it. Men and their egos and their clout chasing and their pocket watching and their lust have destroyed this planet, especially their lust for young women, women that are underage. Has destroyed this planet. Let's look at the meaning of the Shar. In Sumerian culture, the Sumerian term Shar holds multiple layers of meaning, encompassing concepts of rulership, divinity, and the measurement of time. In the context of the Sumerian kings list, a Shar referred to time. How much time did each king rule? Okay, and we're going to go into this a little bit. We're not going to go into the kings list, but we're going to go deeper into the meaning of the Shar. Under rulership and authority, a Shar is often associated with kingship and sovereignty. It denotes the power of authority that a ruler held over a city-state or territory. And there were many city-states and many territories ruled over by these people in ancient times. Atlantis was not just the only amazing city on Earth. That was one amazing capital that existed, but that was one of many capitals that existed on this planet that were operating at a very high level of sophistication. The Ring City was just one. It wasn't the one all be all. It literally was just one of many. This aspect of Shar reflects the Sumerian belief in the divine appointment of kings who were seen as intermediaries between the gods and the people. Divinity and cosmic order also played a huge role. This term Shar also carries connotations of divinity and the sacred, linking the ruler not only to terrestrial authority, but also to cosmic order and balance. Kings were often depicted and chosen by the gods, and these gods are not real gods that created anything in the universe. They are just advanced beings that look like us, that look like people, not green men with antennas. Okay, not little green men with antennas, but people, men and women that put their pants on and dresses on just like we do. Women and men. I'm talking about people, not the creator of the universe. We're talking about an advanced race that engaged us on this planet, that masqueraded as gods because of their advanced knowledge and their technology. When they ran into less advanced indigenous cultures, we deified them and said, oh, they must be gods. Look what they got. They have magic. Just like we do today. Many people today would bow down in a heartbeat if they saw a man flying down from the sky. The Jesus has returned. It's the second coming. They bow down and start sobbing. Instantly. Today, in the 21st century, they'll do that today. It happened back then as well. Nothing's new. Nothing's new under the sun. Ecclesiastes. See, I can quote the Bible too. So we're talking about divinity and cosmic order, okay? Also, units of time. And I'm going to provide you the receipts for this. The Shah was used as a unit of time corresponding to a complete cycle or extensive period, which could be interpreted as 3,600 years based on later Babylonian astronomical texts, not based on Billy Carson, not based on Zecharia Sitchin, not based on Gerald Clark or anyone else who wrote books about the Anunnaki. And I'm going to give you the sources because I want you to look it up. Based on later Babylonian astronomical texts that inherited and adapted Sumerian terminology. This use of Shar illustrates a Sumerian sophisticated understanding of time, encompassing both historical and chronological and cosmological timescales and cycles. The Shar also is a representative of legacy and interpretations. It's a multifaceted word. It has many, many meanings. In Sumerian texts, it highlights the complexity of Sumerian thought regarding kingship, divinity, and the cosmos. The concept transcends simple categorization, intertwining mundane political authority with profound spiritual and cosmological dimensions. So we're talking about something that doesn't have just one simple meaning, but also it represents a complete ideology. Just like when you look at the Om symbol, it looks like the 3 with the little dot. It's not a letter. It's a complete ideology. It's a complete understanding. The study of Shar and its use in Sumerian cuneiform tablets, especially within the context of the Sumerian Kings list, offers invaluable insights into the worldview from one of the earliest civilizations. It reflects the Sumerian sophisticated understanding of authority of the divine cosmos and the nature of time themes that continue to resonate in the study of ancient cultures and their legacies. We're talking about a very sophisticated race of people. We're not talking about a bunch of dummies. We're not talking about a bunch of dummies that just hop on YouTube and start spewing stuff out of their mouth and attacking people. We're talking about intelligent people. We're talking about wise people. We're talking about sages, wisdom keepers, and we're talking about advanced beings. Many of us can learn from this level of knowledge that they've left behind for us, but instead a lot of people decide to utilize this information to twist it around so they can still put their boot on other people's necks and dominate them so they can be worshiped in the 21st century. They want to be worshiped today. The term Shar serves as a window into complex societies that existed in ancient Sumer. It reveals an intricate connection between rulership, divinity, cosmology, and is defined in this early civilization. The city between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Through the preservation of these cuneiform tablets, the ongoing efforts of scholars to decipher and interpret them, and the legacy of the Sumerians and their profound contributions to human civilization continue to be appreciated and understood. See, I appreciate this knowledge. I appreciate what was left behind by our ancestors for us to figure out, for us to to glean an insight into their reality and their lifestyle and the way that they lived. Some people, they don't appreciate it. They just want to abuse it. They want to abuse it so they can twist people to worship them. You see? That's what they want to do. But see, I appreciate the ancient knowledge because the ancient knowledge is giving us an insight into what's happening in the future and what's happening now. So when you look into these texts and you start to see the conflict and you start to see the hate and you start to see the love and you start to see the enlightenment and all these different aspects and natures of humanity within these ancient texts, you begin to realize they weren't too far off from who we are right now today. There's only one source that exists, and I mean the source of energy, the divine spark that powers this entire universe. But don't let that word divine fool you. Just because I use the word divine doesn't mean that someone else that can tap into that source or that knowledge doesn't twist it around and use it for darkness. The origins of the Egyptian mysteries come from the teachings of Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. And in the original Egyptian mystery schools, or the Kemetic mystery schools, people were only hand selected as adept initiates into the mysteries. Hand selected only. You couldn't walk up and say, hey, I'm coming in to get this knowledge. The teachings were to empower a person to learn how to go deep within inside themselves and tap into the cosmos from within, going to inner space, and then to expand that from within to the outer space, inner world, outer world, and then begin to affect change on the outer world through knowledge and wisdom and understanding. Over time, as these quote unquote gods with a lowercase g began to vanish and disappear due to wars and everything else, people began to realize that we can continue these teachings. And over time, the dark brothers crept in. This knowledge can be used to not only uplift and enlighten, it can be used to destroy. It can be used to dominate and control. And so then all of a sudden, what started out as positivity and enlightenment turns into Skull and Crossbones, Secret Society, the Bilderberg Group, Secret Society, the Trilateral Commission, all these other, the Illuminati and all these other, there's over 200-300 of them, secret societies. They all have one bottleneck back to the Kemetic mysteries. But they had learned there's power. Lagging should be fixed now. They had learned that there's power in domination. They had learned that there's power in understanding how to take truths and manipulate people with it by remixing it. And that's what happened to the human race. This is why we need to understand this stuff at the deepest of deepest levels. The reason why mainstream scholars argue over the length of time of the Shar, you have some universities and colleges that agree with it, and the biggest ones, mostly out of the United States, because for some reason they're not falling for the agenda. They're beginning to realize, the foreign archaeologists, that saying this Homo sapien mankind, 6,000-7,000 year age is completely false. They're realizing now, the further back we look, the further back things go. And they're beginning to realize and write papers, peer-reviewed science papers, on the fact that these tablets, like the 𝗩𝗎𝗓𝗓, are copies of copies of copies that have been handed down for hundreds of thousands of years. That the Epic of Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh and all these texts, they weren't things that happened a few thousand years ago, that they happened in deep, deep, deep antiquity. And then you have some of the other ones that, if we tell this truth, we're going to lose our grant money. We're going to lose our research money. And I've got a lot of bills to pay. And I'm still paying off my student loans. I got 30 years to go to pay this student loan off. So if I jump outside of this evolutionary theory and start telling too many truths, the powers that be, and I do mean elite powers that be, are going to withdraw my grants and take away my tenure at this university. That's what's going on. You see? Let's get into some sources and some information here, because I want to give you guys my receipts, because you know I like my receipts. You see, I got the forbidden receipts. I got the forbidden receipts here. This is the Sumerian kings list. It's one tablet with 4 sides. So you're looking at 4 sides of one tablet. I've seen this, and I've got personal photos of this that I've taken with this from the 𝗩𝗓𝗦𝗬𝗧 Museum in Oxford, England. See, I actually have a real passport, and I can really travel to these places. I'm not banned from traveling because I didn't have a record. Some people, their passport, they can't leave the country because they're being watched for what they've done in the past. But I can actually go. Let's take a look here. And now I'm going to read directly from some of these sources, mythological and epic texts. Let me spread this out so I can see it a little bit better. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Primarily Akkadian, this epic, which has Sumerian antecedents, often mentions kingship and divine authority, context where Shar might be used in its Sumerian form in earlier versions. See, in earlier versions or references are within the epic. Another example, prime example of a tablet that had been copied many times. There have been many versions, a Babylonian, even an Akkadian version, and several other versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh, all very similar, almost identical. However, they keep going back and aging themselves further and further back. As people wanted to keep the story intact for the future generations, they realized, I better make a copy of this. Remember, there weren't no printing presses back then. And they did it in stone so it can stand the test of time. So if you want to find out where you could find information on this, don't look to me. Don't look to other YouTubers that are just trying to figure out how they can control your mind and turn you into a dark brother. 𝗪𝗪𝗪 and the Lord of Atra, a Sumerian poem that describes the conflict between the city-states of Uruk and Atra, and the term Shah could be used in reference to the rulership and divine mandates. Historical and royal inscriptions, the Sumerian kings list, which we just showed you. This is a compilation of kings, their cities, and their lengths of their reigns. You can look that up. You can find them online. If you can get your passport in order, hop on a plane and go to the 𝗩𝗓𝗦𝗬𝗧 Museum like I did. Talk to the director of the museum like I did and get the direct information like I did. Royal inscriptions of various Sumerian rulers. Tablets commemorating the achievements of Sumerian kings often include the term Shar to denote their authority and divine right to rule. Examples include inscriptions from the reigns of rulers like Gudea, Lagash, 𝗪𝗓𝗪, and 𝗪𝗓𝗪 of Ur. Administrative and economic records also exist that you can look up. Administrative tablets. Although less glamorous than mythological texts and royal inscriptions, administrative tablets from various Sumerian city-states would use Shar in context of land measurement or to denote authority over certain territories and administrative units. So some people on YouTube have taken this administrative measurement and twisted it on your mind to make you think something totally different. Astronomical and astrological texts. Later Mesopotamian civilizations inherited Sumerian knowledge and used Shar as a unit of time in their astronomical and astrological calculations. While these are more typically Akkadian or Babylonian, they have their roots in Sumerian practices. Scholarly 𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪 It's important to note that due to the vast number of cuneiform tablets that remain untranslated or fragmentary, Identifying every instance of Shar would be an ongoing scholarly endeavor. There's references of it literally thousands and thousands of times. So I'm going to give you some sources where you could begin to do your own research. If you didn't get it, these were some sources, and you can go back and you can write down the names of these sources, and you can actually begin to do some research like a real investigator instead of listening to other people. History begins at Sumer, 39 first recorded in history. This is one of the sources here where you can find out about Shars. History begins at Sumer, 39 first recorded history by Samuel Noah Kramer. This book is a classic introduction into Sumerian history and culture, offering translations and interpretations of key Sumerian texts, including discussions on kingship and the use of cuneiform. This is one of the sources I used in this podcast and talk tonight. A second one, The Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character by Samuel Noah Kramer. Again, another great author. Kramer's comprehensive study provides an in-depth look at Sumerian civilizations, including their contributions to writing, law, governance, and his examination of Sumerian texts sheds light on the concept of Shar and its significance. See, a real scholar, not fake scholars, real scholars that have real passports that can really travel and leave their city-state. Cuneiform by Irving Finkel and Jonathan Taylor. If you don't know who Irving Finkel is, just get off the video right now. This guy is the guy who runs the British Museum and teaches cuneiform. This guy is a linguist and translator. He runs the entire section at the British Museum, where I've been in person. This book is written by experts from the British Museum, offers insights into the development and use of cuneiform writing, including its application in recording the Sumerian kings list and other historical documents. So make sure you get the book Cuneiform by Irving Finkel and John Taylor. I've used him in my lectures and presentations so many times. The guy's been on documentaries, TV shows, docu-series, BBC News, you name it. He's world famous. Number 4 source, Sumerian mythology, a study of spiritual and literary achievement in the 3rd millennium BC by Samuel Noah Kramer. This work explores Sumerian religious beliefs and myths, providing context for understanding the divine aspects of the Shar and its relevance to kingship and cosmology. You have these sources here. I hope you guys are going to use them. The Literature of Ancient Sumer, another one that I used, edited by Jeremy Black, Graham Cunningham, Eleanor Robson, and Gabor Zalomi. This compilation includes translations of Sumerian literary texts, offering insights into the culture's views on authority, divinity, and time. Then another one I used, Early Mesopotamia, Society and Economy at the Dawn of History by Nicholas Postgate. Postgate Books discusses the social and economic structures of early Mesopotamian societies, including the role of kings and the use of cuneiform and administrative purposes. Number 7 I used, Royal Inscriptions of Mesopotamia. Early Periods, Sumerian Rulers of the 3rd Dynasty of Ur by Douglas Frayne. This volume includes translations of inscriptions from one of Sumer's most significant dynasties, providing direct sources for the use of Shar in context of the royal authority and divinity. Then I have some more sources that I went through. History Begins at Sumer, 39 First in Recorded History by Samuel Noah Kramer. This book is a classic introduction to Sumerian history and culture, offering translations and interpretations of key Sumerian texts, including discussions on kingship and the use of cuneiform. So, we're talking about all these sources here that exist. And guess what? I have all of these books. I have all of these texts. I've got remember I did that book workshop, I don't know how many years ago that was, 3 years ago, when I showed you 400 books on my desk and I had another 1,000 books on the ground. We ended at 440 books or so. That's on Forbidden Knowledge TV. You go to Forbidden Knowledge TV, get the free Forbidden Knowledge TV app, download it, get the free trial, and look up the Billy Carson Forbidden Book List. And you'll see me go through every book. I got books stacked up higher than my head. And I'm going through every book giving you the title and giving you a brief description of what each book is about, because I know what each book is about because I've read them all. Early Mesopotamia Society and Economy at the Dawn of History by Nicholas Postgate. And another, number 7, Royal Inscriptions of Mesopotamia, Early Period, Sumerian Rulers of the Third Dynasty. And let's look at this here. I'm going to give you guys some source links. For researchers and enthusiasts, getting a little tired talking here, looking to find specific tablets mentioning the word Shar, resources such as Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, the ETCSL, most people don't even know that exists. One of my biggest sources for information, the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, which I talk about all the time in my lectures and interviews and podcasts, the CDLI, is actually originally hosted by UNLV, I believe it is. UCLA originally hosted this, the CDLI, Online Digital Library Initiative, okay, UCLA. Then we have the Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary, the PSD. These databases offer transliterations, translations, and discussions of thousands of Sumerian texts, providing a searchable resource for specific terms and their occurrences. So screenshot this and start going to work, okay? Start going to work. Anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thanks for hanging out tonight, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.